We are live. It's your boy Calcast Boxing here. Hit that sub button for nightly boxing videos and podcasts. I wanted to do a quick one tonight. Was watching the Hawaii versus Cal football game that I got some money on. So it's halftime. So I wanted to get this one done during the halftime show and then hopefully win some money in the second half. We'll see. But I want to touch on a few subjects tonight. Obviously, I'm going to get to the comments that I got overnight, the video responses. Sean Newton dropped a video about Errol Spence Jr. and Sean Porter that I wanted to touch on. Shout out to Sean Newton, and also shout out to my boy Karceno, who dropped a video about Floyd Mayweather being the GOAT, the greatest that ever lived. There was a point in time when you could just dismiss stuff like that and say, it's not a big deal. That guy's just delusional. And Karceno's a great guy. Don't get me wrong. But when it comes to Floyd is his idol. That's his hero. There was a point in time when you could just brush stuff like that off. But there are enough people, and I'm not saying Karceno's one of these people, but there are enough people who just started following boxing in 2007 to 2010 since Floyd came around. And they think boxing is dead since Floyd left, and they think Floyd is the beginning and end of all boxing. So, I'm not going to stop those people from thinking Floyd is the GOAT because those people are well past that point. But at least I could maybe educate some people into not thinking that, who just started following boxing. So maybe that. Canelo Alvarez, I got an article about him I wanted to touch on. So let's get to it. Let's get to the comments section below. We're going to discover these together because I haven't really looked at them yet. I did see Hawker Mustang was all over the place on here, and that's always fun to watch. So shout out to him. And let's start with that. Hawker Mustang dropped a comment on the podcast last night. Last week, some guy told me to check out a channel, so I did. I watched his Kovalev versus Ward video. He's picking Ward to KO Kovalev. There are too many shitty boxing channels now. If you're picking Ward to beat Kovalev, that's fine. I mean, that's very much plausible, 50-50 fight. But if you're picking Ward to beat Kovalev by KO, yeah, that's not good. It's just not a good prediction. I'm sure it's possible, but it's just not a good prediction. So I think Hawker Mustang's instincts are correct on that. That boxing channel is probably not very good. Hawker Mustang, his next comment, I heard D-Style is organizing a Black Lives Matter protest march. Look, D-Style is my man. I like D-Style as my boy. We've done a lot of work together in the past and hopefully in the future. I dropped a message last week. He hasn't gotten back to me yet about doing some collabs, and hopefully we'll be doing a lot of collabs in the near future. Very much looking forward to that. I love his channel. But it's not a surprise we don't agree on social issues, but that's social issues. We're talking about boxing now. So whether D-Style is organizing a Black Lives Matter protest march or not, I don't know. I don't know. I just hope he doesn't stand in the street and block traffic because it's just pretty much a dumb thing to do. Just stand on the sidewalk while you do it, D-Style. Hawker Mustang, again, Dana White is a great matchmaker and a really good promoter. Al Heyman is a lousy matchmaker who hides in the closet. I think Al Heyman could be a good matchmaker if he wanted to be. He's very much intelligent, obviously, but and he knows his boxing, obviously. He knows his fighters. But the problem with having a manager run a company like this is, and he's basically the promoter. He's got de facto promoters working for him, the Lou DiBellas, the Gary Shaws, or whoever else, the Floyd Mayweathers, acting as figurehead promoters for him when really he's in the background doing the active promoting. The problem with it is managers naturally want to protect their fighters. They're not into making the best fights. They're not into promoting a great card or making money for the card. They're into making money for their fighter, making money for themselves, and getting their fighter out of there before he gets hurt. So naturally, that's what Al Heyman is doing. So it's not that he's a lousy matchmaker. He's actually a very good matchmaker for what he wants for being a manager. He could be a great matchmaker as a promoter if he wanted to be, but he doesn't want to be as of right now. So whether Dana, I don't know if Dana White's. I'm not going to speak on that. I don't know enough about the UFC to know if Dana White's a great matchmaker or not. I know they're putting on pretty good fights, but I don't think you really make the comparison with Al Heyman because he's a manager. And that's the problem with one of the problems with this whole PBC thing. Also, Al Heyman was overpaying his boxers to fight cherry pick showcase fights. Yes, that's what managers do. Give managers power. That's what they'll do. That was great for the boxers. It didn't do for the fans, though. Exactly. That's my whole point. The fighters are very much doing better since Al Heyman came around. He has tipped the power in favor of the fighter. However, when you do that, you take away entertainment that the fans should be getting. He's tipped that away from the fight fan. And that's, once again, another one of my issues with the PBC is that the fans aren't getting what they deserve. A lot of promoters have been doing that. Every promoter has been doing that over the years, decades, over the century, not giving the fight fans some of the fights they don't want to see. But it seems like Al Heyman even more so than those because he's a manager. Once again, why should I fight a real fight when I can make millions to beat up some hobo? That's exactly what I'm saying. If Danny Garcia turns down $4 million to fight Pacquiao and he's going to make maybe $2 to $3 million to fight Berto, why fight Pacquiao? If you're not a real competitor, if you don't want to be the best, like Danny Garcia obviously doesn't want to be, or maybe Al Heyman told him, no, you're not going to fight Pacquiao. I don't know. I don't know what's going on behind the scenes, but if you can fight Berto for that much money and beat him, which he will, because Berto is just an average fighter, why fight Pacquiao? VVS1 Loose Stones responded to Hawker Mustang. And look, the comment sections get bloody. It becomes a war, and it goes from 1 to 100 quickly. He responded to Hawker Mustang, you love watching porn where white girls get long stroked by black dudes. You have an extreme case of penis envy. You most likely pay to watch black dudes bang out your girl / wife. Where that came from, I have no idea. But I'll tell you this. Hawker Mustang is like the Antonio Margarito of the comment section. That guy just keeps coming. I've seen him in other comment sections fighting 5 dudes at the same time, like Patrick Swayze in Roadhouse, and somehow prevail. And even when he doesn't prevail, dude, he's just going to come right back. He's like a roach that you just cannot kill. I'm telling you, he's the Antonio. He's like the White Walkers or the Daywalkers, whatever they call them in Game of Thrones. You can shoot them in the face, they're going to fall down, but they're going to get right back up and walk straight towards you. You just cannot kill them. And that's Hawker Mustang. And of course, Hawker Mustang comes back to VVS1 Loose Stone. Sounds like some shit a pea-brain subhuman would say. And that's what I'm saying. Like he just comes back. But it's exchanges like this. I don't know. I don't get offended by much, and I'm definitely not offended by this. I just find it funny. It's funny. It's funny to watch guys go at it like that, and it goes from 1 to 100 quick. I'm amused by it. I love the comment section. The comment section is bloody. It's treacherous waters. So don't jump in the waters if you can't swim and you can't survive this stuff. So shout out to Hawker Mustang and VVS1 Loose Stones for that great exchange. The funny thing about that is that came out of nowhere. VVS1 Loose Stones. He didn't even throw a jab. There was no like just jab. He went straight for the haymaker. He was trying to knock Hawker Mustang out right there. And Hawker Mustang shrugged it off and came back with a haymaker of his own. So shout out to those guys for a great fight there. 10-10 round. I scored a draw. Maybe not. Maybe VVS Loose Stones. That was a good get long stroke by black dudes. Yeah, 10-9 round for VVS Loose Stones. But shout out to Hawker Mustang for taking it and coming back. Kevin Carter, shout out to my boy K Carter from New Orleans over here. If they made boxing gloves out of candy, would more boxers want to get hit in the mouth? What does that even mean? He also says, who's the best boxer in the world right now? I don't know. I don't know. You all know how I feel about the pound for pound thing. There's no way of us possibly knowing, but I do feel left out when people start talking pound for pound, and it does seem like fun. It's almost like, I don't know if you ever watched the 80s movie Can't Buy Me Love, where Dr. McDreamy, the young Dr. McDreamy, is outside of the New Year's party and he's looking through the glass window and all of his peers are having fun on the inside and he's on the outside crying. That's how I feel when you guys are having pound for pound discussions at points. So I might just have to concede that this stuff is fun to talk about, although it still doesn't mean much to me. I have to concede that it does look like fun, and maybe I should jump into some of these discussions. I don't know, but look, Tyson Fury, maybe you could throw out there. He beat the guy. He beat Klitschko. He's the heavyweight champion of the world. He's the baddest man on the planet right now, although some would disagree that he's the best heavyweight in the world. I just think he beat the guy, so he should be the guy. Gennady Golovkin has dominated his division without fighting some of the top guys in the division because those guys are running scared. So I guess you could throw him in the mix. I guess you could throw Kovalev in the mix at 175 for dominating 175 so far. I don't know. Some people would throw Carl Frampton in there. From some of the comments I've been getting, and I'll get on one of those later. Chocolatito, obviously, he's the guy who seems to be getting the most votes for number one right now, from what I see. So I don't know. You could throw a ton of guys out there. I'm not sure who's going to fill that vacuum, because before it seemed like everybody was Mayweather or Pacquiao. Now that those two guys have seemed to taper off, somebody's going to fill that vacuum. I'm not sure who it'll be. We'll see. Will the rise? Fine Truth writes, will the rise of the UFC and non-cooperation between TV networks and promoters boxing is on the fall? The powers that need to get together and pull in the same direction. The powers in boxing will not get together and pull in the same direction. I mean, that's just a pipe dream. It's not going to happen. They'll never work together. They always work against each other. He also writes the sanctioning bodies play a big part in the fall. Yeah, obviously. There's a ton of stuff that plays into this. There's a ton of stuff that led to the fall of boxing. I mean, premium channels, pay-per-views, sanctioning bodies, that played a huge part in it. Adding weight classes and making this all more complex. Boxing needs to be simplified, period. Even with great fights. I talk about great fights. We need to be putting on great fights. But even with that, there's still more work to do, because even with that, I've always said, even after a great fight, still comes complexity, still comes confusion. Because I don't know if you ever sat with a casual, even during a great fight, even after the fight, they'll be like, well, is he now number one or is he number two? No, that guy's champion, that guy's champion. And then this guy's contender. And then this guy has this belt, this guy has that belt. And then you'll see them, their head just starts spinning. And they're like, why do you even follow this? Even after a great fight. So the sport needs to be simplified. And that's one of the things I was hoping that Al Heyman would do, get rid of the belts and try to simplify this thing. But inside the PBC anyway, but it's not happening. It's not, and it's not going to happen. So it's just something we're going to have to live with. We're going to have to live with a niche sport and continue to follow it. I don't know what to say. Brian Ibarra writes, I think Mikey's chin will get more exposed at 147. He's talking about Mikey Garcia in the video I dropped about him. Mikey Garcia isn't at 147. He's at 140. But even at that, you might be right. At 140, it might get exposed. I'm not sure. The 140 isn't exactly a strong division, though. You got Crawford there. I don't see those guys fighting at 140. Maybe so. I think Garcia said he's going to settle in at 140. Maybe it was 135, but maybe it's at 135. I'm not sure. Mike Garcia is going to settle. I think he'll eventually settle in at 140, though. And maybe against the right 140-pounder, his chin will get exposed. I don't know. But to me, he hasn't shown any evidence of that. You never know when a guy steps up in weight. A la Paul Williams stepping up and fighting Sergio Martinez at 160. At 147, Paul Williams, it seemed like he could take any punch. But when you step up in weight, sometimes your chin can't handle that added weight hitting your chin. But I haven't seen Mikey Garcia show evidence of a flawed chin or a glass chin. So I lean towards not. We'll see. Let's see. Shia Bikel, one thing I don't understand about your beef with the PBC is why do you care about them losing money? I care about them losing money because this thing has to be sustainable. That's it. It's not like I'm walking around and saying, oh, Al Heyman's losing money. Yes, I love that Al Heyman's losing money. Or I hate that Al Heyman's losing money. I don't care about Al Heyman's pockets. I don't care about his wallet. I don't care about any of these guys' wallet. To me, it matters because this thing has to be sustainable. It has to be. I don't want the PBC to fall apart in 5 years from now. There's no telling where we'll be. I want it to be successful. I would love to have boxing on network television. I would love to have boxing everywhere 5 years from now on every channel. But for that to happen, the PBC can't lose money. It's point blank period. It has to, businesses have to make money. Companies have to make money. Products have to make money. So in order for this thing to be still here 5 years from now, they can't keep bleeding $500 million every 3 years. It's got to be sustainable. The money has to start coming in. These networks have to invest in boxing instead of boxing investing in the networks. And that's what's happening right now. Al Heyman is paying the networks to get his fighters on TV. It's an infomercial. He needs to get the networks to pay for him to come to them. That's how it has to work for this thing to be successful long term. So that's why I care about it. You're watching free fights. I'm not watching free fights. People need to stop saying that. Network TV, although cheap, is not free. You pay for it in your package. It's not premium cable, but it's not free either. Even if you don't have cable, you have to buy an antenna from Walgreens or something and screw it into the back of your TV, and you're paying for the antenna, and then you only get a couple channels. You get maybe 10, 15 channels, and then Spike's not going to be on that, and these other channels are. So you're still paying for it. It's not free TV, but I get what you're saying. It's network TV, but my whole point with that is just because it's on network TV, that doesn't give you the excuse to put on crappy fights. It just doesn't. It's like going to a bar and you sit down at the bar and the guy next to you, your boy, says, I'm paying for this round. And then he gives you the beer and it's a flat, crappy beer. And you're like, wait a second, instead of this free beer, I would have rather paid $3 for the Bud Light myself and drink it. I would enjoy myself more. So that's my whole thinking as far as that goes. I can see an argument for not seeing the best fights of all the time. Yeah, but you're not getting the best fights on cable and pay-per-view all the time either. I'm not. But once again, my issue with this is Al Heyman said this is going to be something new. It's going to be something fresh. It's going to be better. It's going to be cleaner. It's going to be the belts are going to be gone. You're going to get the good fights. This was supposed to be something different and fresh. That's how he packaged this thing. So I'm holding him to those standards. PBC is definitely flawed like boxing as a whole, but I just think that you're nitpicking a little here. Maybe I'm nitpicking. But once again, I'm holding him to high standards because that's what the standards he set for himself. Bree 1986. How do you rate Frampton pound for pound? A lot of talk of top 10. What do you reckon? Once again, the pound for pound thing is blurry to me. I don't really pay much stock into it. I don't know. I don't know where he ranks. Top 10, I'm not sure. That seems a little premature to me, maybe. I love Carl Frampton. That upper body head movement, the counter punching is great. Athletic fighter, puts power, turns on his punches. Everything seems to be there. Wants to put on the best fights. Has a great fan base. Everything seems to be there for the guy. I just feel like I need to see a little more before I grant him elite fighter status, or maybe not. I mean, he's a really good fighter, but to get to that top level, maybe I need to see him beat some of these other guys that are at the top in and around that division. Leo Santa Cruz's biggest win so far, so I need to see one or two more like that before I grant him that. But the upside, the ceiling is very high with Carl Frampton. I like him a lot. Just want to say, years ago I said Carl Frampton would be world champ. I was right. You were right. Definitely right about that. The best counter puncher ever. No, he's not the best counter puncher ever. He says, not joking. Think about it. Who's better at counterpunching? I can name a lot of guys who I think are better at counterpunching than Carl Frampton. Once again, I think you're a little too premature there, but Carl Frampton, very much a lot of upside with him. I like Carl Frampton a lot. Maxwell Bear, thanks for the response. I believe that Golovkin would beat anyone at 168. That's plausible. Video was just about the standards that's involved. Also, unlike how you gave Mayweather credit for being a great fighter, a lot of the Golovkin detractors are of the opinion that unless he goes all the way up to 175, Ward can't make 168 anymore. He said it to fight Ward Kovalev winner that he hasn't proven himself. Yeah, I agree. The one difference would be Mayweather started a little lower in weight class than he is now at 147. And at the beginning of his career, that being said, settled in at welterweight for a decade now. So he's fighting close to his natural weight, as is Golovkin. So not much of a difference there. And yeah, I mean, Mayweather going up to 160 to fight Golovkin isn't, or when I was calling for him to fight Sergio Martinez, isn't much different than Golovkin going up to face Andre Ward at 175, which people are calling for. I've even heard him say he should fight Kovalev, go up to 175 to fight Kovalev as well. Yet these same people might say that Mayweather is biting off more than he could chew by going up to 160. Once again, it's the standards that they set for themselves and they set for their fighters, and you can see it in how they talk. So I don't know. Just let those people dig their own graves. That's how I see it. I'm done trying to fight that battle. As far as the Flomos go, it is what it is. Now, done with the comments. Let's get on the video responses real quick. Sean Newton dropped the video about Errol Spence Jr. and Sean Porter. The reason I wanted to, and very good video, by the way, and I agree with it, but the reason I wanted to touch on and elaborate on my thoughts on it, because when I dropped the video yesterday about that, or when I mentioned it in the podcast, I said that Sean Porter isn't above a fight with Errol Spence. That was my exact words. Now, I didn't mean Sean Porter Sean Porter isn't above Errol Spence. That's not what I meant. I meant he's above a fight. He isn't above a fight with Errol Spence. In other words, if Sean Porter can't get the Keith Thurman rematch, if Danny Garcia has to fight a mandatory with Amir Khan, and all these guys have other fights, and Errol Spence can't get Kell Brook, and then those two guys are standing there, and obviously Sean Porter is the guy who is willing to take on all challengers, Sean Porter and Errol Spence should be the fight that happens. But as Sean Newton pointed out in the video, there are other options out there before Errol Spence for Sean Porter. Sean Porter has proved himself. Sean Porter has been in there with fighters. Errol Spence hasn't been in there with the top elite fighter yet. So yeah, in that instance, Sean Porter is above Errol Spence. Nobody should disagree with that. To me, I'm all about resume. So give me the guy with the tougher strength of schedule over the guy with the potential who hasn't yet fought anybody. But Errol Spence Jr. seems like he wants to fight the top guys. He seems ambitious. So if Sean Porter is there with no fight, I don't think he should be of the opinion that, oh, I'm above Errol Spence, how he read in the interview that he gave yesterday. He was basically saying, oh, Errol Spence isn't ready yet. We're above that fight right now. It's basically what I got from it. And if my opinion is, if the potential for that fight plays out and neither one of those guys have anybody else, fight. But yes, very much so. Sean Porter has other fights out there that make business sense and make boxing sense that would take precedent over Errol Spence Jr. So, he's right. He's right on that. I just wanted to clarify my opinion that I don't think Sean Porter, I very much think Sean Porter is above Errol Spence in the rankings. I would definitely rank him higher because Sean Porter is a guy who has willingly gone out there, called out the best fighters, and has fought the best fighters that he could possibly fight. I like Sean Porter a lot. And I think you can make the argument that he possibly beat Keith Thurman. I don't remember how I scored the fight, to be honest. I know I had it close. I'd have to go back and watch the video, but very good fight there. And you know, I just don't think he's above an Errol Spence Jr. fight. If these other dominoes fall and go in a different direction, and both of those guys are still standing there, I think they should fight each other. That's just my opinion on that. Wanted to clarify that. Also, Karceno, let's get to that video. And I couldn't get through much of it, to be honest. And Karceno, what happens with Karceno's channel is every once in a while, Karceno is like Floyd Mayweather's state-run media. Floyd will shine a huge K for Karceno in the Chicago skyline. And then Karceno will see it and he'll be like, okay, it's time to drop another Floyd Mayweather worship video. And then he drops a video about Floyd being the greatest ever and whatnot. And then all of the Flomos converge in his comment section and they all unite like a great transformer and become the ultimate Flomo. You know, and that's what happens here. And then what happens, what I don't like, and most of these guys started following boxing recently and they don't know the history of boxing and why this is an asinine statement. But the problem is the more guys who are exposed to this, the more guys actually start believing this crap. And I think it's important to start combating some of that, maybe, although it's tough to do. But all I have to say, man, is Sugar Ray Leonard, let's just throw him out there, fought Marvin Hagler. Yes, it took him years to do it. Yes, he nitpicked about weight, but he still fought the baddest middleweight, arguably, that ever lived, that ever walked the face of the planet, Sugar Ray Leonard. He also fought Hearns. I mean, he fought Duran. He fought everybody that was his peer at that time. He just had he had a tougher schedule, and he won on the scorecards. Arguably beat the greatest middleweight possibly that ever lived, and he was a welterweight. He went all the way up to 168 to fight Donnie Lalonde. I know it's Lalonde. I know they created this super middleweight basically for Sugar Ray Leonard, but Lalonde is still a much bigger fighter. And I believe Lalonde knocked him down in that fight. So did great things. Hagler did great things. Hearns did great things. Duran, all of these guys, you look at, they fought their peers at their time, in their primes. You look at Sugar Ray Robinson. He fought Jake LaMotta, what, 6 times? Who the hell fight Jake? That would be like Floyd fighting Golovkin 6 times. You know, and that's my whole point, is when you throw out this elaborate statement like this, like greatest ever, you know how difficult it is to compare fighters from different eras. It's hard to compare fighters from today to fighters in the 80s and early 90s. So you're gonna compare them to fighters from the 30s, 40s, 50s. I mean, you're talking about Sugar Ray Robinson. You look at Muhammad Ali. He fought Ken Norton 3 times. He fought George Foreman, a prime George Foreman. Prime George Foreman is arguably the baddest man to ever walk the face of the planet. Just think Mike Tyson, but bigger and better. That was George Foreman in his prime. Arguably the hardest punching fighter of all time. He fought him in his prime, went with the rope-a-dope, and knocked him out when Muhammad Ali was well past his prime. He fought Joe Frazier 3 times. Who in the hell wants to fight Joe Frazier 3 times? I mean, just look at Sonny Liston. Just look at the murderer's row that Ali went through. So it's blasphemy to even compare Floyd to these guys, in my opinion. Blasphemy. Yes, I mean, the talent's off the charts, but come on. Really, how out of touch with history do you have to be? Pick up a book, man. Are there no libraries in Chicago? I mean, I know you have to dodge bullets to get there, but pick up a book, man. You got the internet. You got the Google search engine. Floyd's the greatest ever? How out of touch with history do you have to be? I don't know, man. I think you would be better served just comparing him to fighters of this generation. And maybe you could try to convince people of that. Maybe. Even that would be tough. But I mean, just look at Pernell Whitaker. Just look at Roy Jones going a decade without basically even losing a round. I don't know, man. Woo, delusional. Let's get to the boxing scene article I saw earlier, because I wanted to touch on this before I wrapped up, because I thought it was funny and I think is relevant. Liam Smith said Canelo had to go to 154 to save face over Golovkin. And I said this a couple weeks ago when I was talking about this. I think the reason because I was wondering why Canelo, he was struggling to get to 154. And I was wondering why, after fighting all these 155 fights and then saying he's going to 160, why would he fight at 154? And Liam Smith basically said what I said a couple weeks ago about this. He said, I would have taken the fight at 155. I can make 155 and I could even do 156. The negotiation was for 154, and I understand why, because he has to save face. To look respectful for him to give his middleweight title up, he has to go back to 154. That's why I was always confident I could get the fight. It would be embarrassing if he ducked Golovkin and didn't fight me at 154. I knew he had to come to 154. From their point of view, he beats me and is back as a champion at 154, and then he can say, I can make 154. I'm not fighting Triple G at 160. That was their excuse. I think more so than that, I think he had to go to 154 just to say, I'm going back down to 154, just for an excuse of not fighting Triple G in this fight. Because just think about if he fights a middleweight in this fight and it's not Triple G, and Triple G was his mandatory. Not a good look. So this, although people saw right through it, this, maybe he was thinking, this gives me an out. I can go back down to 154, say it's my natural weight, so I can make it easy, and I can stay away from Triple G for a while. But people see straight through it, and he's going to be fighting possibly Billy Joe Saunders in his next fight. So people saw right through it, and even Liam Smith saw right through it, and that's why he knew he could get the fight. So shout out to Liam Smith for speaking his mind on this and speaking up on it, and I definitely agree with it. That being said, I'm going to get back to this Hawaii versus Cal college football game and watching that and hopefully win some money. Probably not, though. And more to come. Kell Brook versus Triple G prediction video will be up later this weekend. And actually, if I'm home tomorrow night and watching the fight live, I'll be doing a post-fight show on Guerrero and the Alfredo Angulo fights tomorrow night. So hopefully that happens if I'm home to watch it live. We'll see. But that being said, I'm logging off, man. I appreciate y'all tuning in and listening and watching. So shout out to y'all, and keep those comments coming, and I'll respond to them in the next video.